We're pawnbrokers that happen to be on TV. The uniqueness of our situation is the American Jewelry and Loan business. We're a pawn shop. We deal with 1,000 people that come in to borrow money every day, and that's what drew attention to our store.
Les Gold once stood at the pinnacle of reality TV fame, raking in millions from the hit series Hardcore Pawn. His name became synonymous with the hustle and bustle of the pawn business, a world of tough negotiations, high stakes, and larger-than-life personalities. But behind the booming success, the flashy deals, and the heated arguments that captivated audiences, there was a man quietly teetering on the edge of financial ruin. What truly happened to Detroit's most famous pawnbroker? How did the fortune and fame he amassed from his gritty pawn empire vanish in the blink of an eye? Yet when the cameras stopped rolling and the spotlight faded, Les Gold's once thriving business began to unravel. The empire he built with his sharp instincts and hard-earned knowledge of the pawn industry faced collapse from within. Behind the glossy facade of television drama was a deeper, more unsettling story of high-risk ventures and poor financial decisions. Join us as we pull back the curtain on Les Gold's rise to fame and the shocking downfall that followed. We'll dive into the personal and professional choices that led to his devastating loss of wealth. From the pressure of maintaining his TV persona to risky real estate investments that went awry, discover the untold story behind the dramatic footage. This is more than just the tale of a reality star. It's the story of ambition, risk, and ultimately the crushing reality of watching it all slip away. How did one of television's most memorable personalities fall so far? The answers are waiting to be uncovered.
Pawn shops themselves, an interesting indicator as to the health of the local and sometimes national economy. My next guest noting recently that his pawn shop saw an influx of heavy-duty construction equipment just ahead of the massive economic downturn and housing bubble burst back in 2007. Joining me right now is the star of Hardcore Pawn, Les Gold. Les, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Les Gold's journey began with a small pawn shop in the heart of Detroit, a humble venture that would ultimately grow into a massive 50,000 square foot empire. His business, American Jewelry and Loan, became a staple of the city and a household name, thanks to his unyielding drive and the reality TV show Hardcore Pawn. As his fame and success swelled, so did his ambitions. Armed with both the money from his flourishing pawn shop and the visibility from his TV career, Les set his sights on a new venture: real estate. He believed that Detroit, with its rich history and strong sense of community, would one day rise from the ashes of economic decline. It was a city with boundless potential, and Les was determined to capitalize on that future. In 2017, he dove headfirst into buying up abandoned buildings in some of Detroit's poorest neighborhoods. His plan was simple yet ambitious: transform these crumbling structures into thriving hubs of commerce and affordable housing. He envisioned retail spaces on the ground floors with affordable apartments above. It was a grand vision, a way to revitalize the area while also ensuring a steady stream of rental income. But as with many ambitious ventures, the reality was far more complicated. While the potential was clear, the risks were higher than Les could have anticipated. Industry experts warned him that it was a gamble. Detroit's economic landscape was still uncertain, and the cost of renovating these old, decrepit buildings could easily spiral out of control. Still, Les was confident in his experience and trusted that his vision, coupled with his resources, would make it work. However, the challenges of restoring these buildings quickly became overwhelming. Once the initial inspections were completed, it became clear that the scope of repairs far exceeded anything Les had initially expected. The buildings were in much worse shape than he realized. The structural damage was severe. Dangerous asbestos was found in the walls, and the wiring, decades old, had to be completely replaced. What Les had hoped would cost around $5 million to renovate quickly turned into a nightmare. The true cost of repairs surged to over $15 million. The financial strain was immediate and devastating. With costs ballooning, Les's available funds began to dwindle. Unable to keep up with payments, he fell behind on wages to the workers, who promptly stopped their work. What had once been hopeful projects began to deteriorate, unfinished, as they were exposed to the harsh Detroit weather and fell victim to vandalism. Buildings that could have transformed the city's landscape became eyesores, embodying the failed promises of revitalization. As Les's real estate investments crumbled, another even more urgent crisis began to unfold inside the heart of his empire: American Jewelry and Loan. The same pawn business that had made him a household name and brought him wealth was now on the brink of its own collapse.
Tell us about how that came about.
Well, this friend of my wife's, who plays cards with her, had this collection that she needed appraised. And it just so happened that Good Morning America approached me looking for items that were valuable, that the person that owned them didn't know the price.
When hardcore pawn became a cultural phenomenon in 2014, Les Gold, riding high on the success of his pawn shop empire in Detroit, saw an opportunity to take his business to the next level. He envisioned a new chapter for American jewelry and loan, one that would extend beyond the confines of his hometown. The idea was bold, exciting, and risky. A flashy new pawn shop on the Las Vegas Strip, where tourists could not only pawn their valuables but also see one-of-a-kind items from the Hardcore Pawn TV show, meet the infamous Gold family, and become part of the reality TV magic they had come to love. In 2015, Les made a high-stakes bet. He invested more than $4 million to secure a prime location and build a lavish 15,000-square-foot store. He was determined to make it bigger and better than any of the competition, including the popular Pawn Star store that already had a commanding presence in Vegas. His vision was to create a destination, an attraction, where the excitement of the pawn business met the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas itself. The grand opening in 2016 was a spectacle, complete with a star-studded party, lavish promotions, and extensive ads across local TV and newspapers. The excitement was palpable. Les believed this would be the next big thing. Tourists from around the world would flock to his store, pawning their treasures, shopping for unique items, and taking home a piece of the hardcore pawn experience. Les spared no expense. He hired 35 workers, stocked the store with luxury items and collectibles that would appeal to tourists with deep pockets, and set the stage for what he hoped would be a new cash cow. But what Les didn't anticipate was just how challenging the Las Vegas market would prove to be. Though the store was in a prime location, it was just far enough off the main strip that foot traffic was far lower than expected. And while the flashy signage and celebrity-driven opening might have drawn initial crowds, many tourists simply didn't venture far enough off the beaten path to find Les's shop. On top of that, the operational costs were sky high. Rent alone cost a staggering $75,000 every month, far more than anything he had ever experienced in Detroit. Compounding the problem was the fierce competition. Las Vegas had no shortage of established, popular pawn shops, each with their own loyal clientele. In a city known for its high-stakes gambling and extravagant lifestyle, Les's new store struggled to stand out in a crowded field. Despite all the marketing, the glamour, and the star power behind the project, the Las Vegas shop couldn't generate the revenue Les had hoped for. Over the course of the next year and a half, the losses began to pile up. The store was hemorrhaging money, losing nearly $200,000 every month. The reality of the situation set in. Despite the initial excitement and fanfare, Les's grand expansion was crumbling. In 2018, after much soul-searching and an increasingly grim financial outlook, Les was forced to make the painful decision to close the Las Vegas shop for good. He lost millions in the process, the $4 million spent on construction, the unsold merchandise that remained, and the sunk costs that could never be recouped. The failure of the Las Vegas expansion was a major blow, both financially and to Les's carefully cultivated image as a savvy businessman. What had seemed like a brilliant idea, a chance to replicate the success of his pawn empire on a larger scale, had ended in disaster. The experience left a deep mark on Les, reminding him of the unpredictability of high-risk ventures and the difficult reality of managing expectations when the odds are stacked against you. As Les Gold dealt with the fallout from his Las Vegas expansion, another, even more personal crisis was brewing. A family feud that would further complicate his financial troubles. The Hardcore Pawn Show often captured the ongoing tension between Les and his children, Ashley and Seth, who were constantly trying to prove they were best suited to run the business. While their arguments were dramatized on screen, the truth was their disagreements were real and growing more intense. By 2018, the situation had deteriorated to the point where it began to hurt both the family and the business. Seth, who had worked with his father since his teenage years, felt frustrated by Les's unwillingness to update the business and modernize its operations. Ashley, who had contributed significantly to the company's success with her skills in marketing and customer service, also felt left out of important decisions. Both children wanted more control over the business to match the effort they put into it, but Les consistently rejected their requests. In late 2018, the family split became official when Seth left American Jewelry and Loan to open his own pawn shop just a few miles away, taking loyal workers and customers with him. 6 months later, Ashley followed suit, launching her own custom jewelry business. The family's division caused a rift among their customer base, further damaging the company's stability. Legal battles over ownership and trademarks followed, costing Les over $2 million in lawyer fees and tarnishing the Gold family name. What had once been a thriving, unified business was now fractured, and Les's hopes of passing the empire to his children were dashed. As if that weren't enough, the pandemic hit in 2020, compounding Les's struggles. With his business already weakened by previous losses, the COVID-19 shutdown forced him to close his stores for months. Unlike other businesses, pawn shops rely on in-person transactions, and without customers coming in to pawn items, revenue dried up. When the stores finally reopened, only 40% of the usual customers returned, and operating costs soared due to new safety protocols. By the end of 2020, Les had to shut down 2 of his 3 stores and lay off more than 60% of his staff. The pandemic dealt a final blow to a business already on the brink of collapse. When Michigan's stay-at-home orders hit in 2020, Les Gold was forced to close all 3 of his Detroit area stores for nearly 3 months. Without the ability to conduct in-person transactions, his main source of income, his business ground to a halt. Unlike many other businesses that could pivot to online sales, pawn shops rely heavily on face-to-face interactions to appraise items, negotiate deals, and make sales. Though Les attempted to offer online appraisals, customers were skeptical of the prices they were being given through a screen. To make matters worse, many regular customers, bolstered by government stimulus checks, had less of a need to pawn their belongings, even amid the ongoing financial crisis. When the stores finally reopened in the summer of 2020, the situation was drastically different. Operating costs had soared due to new safety regulations, and only about 40% of the usual clientele returned. Meanwhile, rising gold prices led many people to reclaim their gold items, forcing Les to pay out large sums of cash. By the end of the year, Les was left with no choice but to shut down 2 of his 3 stores permanently and lay off more than 60% of his workforce. The remaining store stayed open, but with reduced hours and a smaller team. The pandemic had deepened his financial struggles, bringing his once thriving business to the brink of collapse. But even as Les struggled to keep his business afloat, another crisis was looming, one that threatened not only his wealth but also his health. Though Les Gold appeared strong and confident on TV, he had been quietly battling health issues for years. He had managed his diabetes with medication and healthy habits, but the mounting stress from his business and family struggles began taking a toll. In December 2020, as his business was already suffering from the pandemic, Les suffered a serious heart attack and required emergency surgery to repair 4 blocked arteries. Unfortunately, his timing couldn't have been worse. Years earlier, when things were going well, Les had chosen a health insurance plan with low monthly premiums but high out-of-pocket costs when treatment was needed. As a result, he faced over $300,000 in medical bills. His recovery was complicated, requiring extended hospital care, which only added to his growing debt. Les had to take nearly 5 months off from his business to recover, during which time less experienced workers made crucial decisions. Without Les's expertise and leadership, the store struggled. Many loyal customers, accustomed to working directly with him, stopped coming once they learned he was absent. When Les returned to work in mid-2021, he was still weak and had to work reduced hours. This made it even harder to rebuild the business, especially with a large amount of medical debt weighing him down. Faced with financial strain, Les even considered selling personal belongings to pay his healthcare bills. But just as he was trying to recover, a new crisis was emerging, a social media scandal that would soon threaten both his reputation and his business. Les had always been aware of the importance of his public image, knowing that his reputation as a tough yet fair negotiator helped fuel the success of his pawn business. Since the days of Hardcore Pawn, he had built a loyal following of fans who continued to support his shop, even after the show ended in 2015. However, as a growing controversy began to spread on social media, Les initially chose to ignore the allegations, believing his established reputation would protect him. But when local news outlets began investigating, he was forced to issue a public denial through his attorneys. Les's delayed response to the growing social media scandal only worsened the public's perception. His legal team's aggressive cease and desist letters to social media users only fueled the controversy, painting him as defensive and evasive. Despite no official charges or lawsuits, the damage to his reputation was immense. In the months following the scandal, customer visits dropped by almost 50%, and many loyal clients began to question whether they had been treated fairly. The trust Les had spent years building with his customers was shattered, and his already struggling business became weaker. As Les fought to salvage his public image, another major crisis loomed: an IRS investigation. Les had long struggled with his taxes, thanks to the nature of his business, which relied heavily on cash transactions and had difficulty tracking inventory. For years, a small accounting firm had helped manage his finances, even before his rise to TV fame. But in September 2021, Les received a letter that most business owners fear. The IRS was launching a full audit of his business and personal taxes over the past 6 years. What began as a routine inquiry into real estate losses and inventory valuations soon escalated. Investigators uncovered a pattern of mixed-up reports and discovered that Les's accountant had used risky tax strategies to help the business survive financially. Although Les claimed he had merely signed the papers his accountant provided, the IRS held him accountable for unpaid taxes spanning several years. By early 2022, the tax bill had ballooned to $2.8 million, including penalties and interest, far more than Les could afford. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, another blow struck. The most valuable part of any pawn shop is its inventory. The items people leave behind never return to reclaim. Over the years, Les had built up a prized collection at his Detroit store, including rare jewelry, expensive watches, musical instruments, and collectible items. This inventory was his last remaining asset and the key to keeping his business afloat. In January 2022, disaster struck American Jewelry and Loan. During a holiday weekend, a group of well-prepared thieves broke into the store, bypassing the outdated security system. They headed straight for the vault and display cases, taking the most expensive and easily transportable items. In a calculated move, they even disabled the cameras and alarms, suggesting they knew exactly how the store's security operated. When employees returned on Tuesday, they discovered that more than $3.2 million worth of inventory had been stolen. The investigation revealed that the store's security system had significant weaknesses, issues Les had ignored to cut costs. On top of that, Les had lowered his insurance coverage the previous year to save money. As a result, his policy covered only about 40% of the stolen goods. After a lengthy investigation, the insurance company provided $1.3 million, a fraction of the full value. This theft not only drained Les financially, but also crippled his ability to operate. With so much inventory gone, there were fewer items for customers to choose from, making the store less attractive. To restock, Les had to use most of the insurance payout to buy new inventory at wholesale prices, leaving him with even less cash to cover other essential expenses.